Hi, Nia. My name is Manon. I'm the Major Programs Manager at Film Midlands. For those of you who don't know, Major Programs is a cross-fan programming initiative. It consists of 2 UK-wide seasons called Film Fills and Blockbusters for fan exhibitors to take part in. And fittingly, this current season, led by the BFI in partnership with us, is a horror season called In Dreams and Monsters. And last year's season was a celebration of Japanese cinema, including a lot of anime screenings. So it's quite a nice tie-in into our panel. Just a reminder, the session is about genre cinema and its steady march towards the limelight. There's been for quite a long time this idea that genre cinema has been often pushed to the edges and the margins, but actually it's been bringing a lot of dedicated audiences, it's been filling theaters, and also foregrounding exciting voices and filmmaking talents, which I think is something that we're all really keen to do and strive for. With that in mind, we're going to be hearing from 3 film festival experts to get insight into their work with horror and anime, and learn how venues and programmers can better integrate genre in their year-round programming, and in doing so, reach and nurture a breadth of audiences. So if you guys don't mind one after the other to introduce yourself, tell me about your role, your festival in a few words, and actually, just before we continue, I'm going to describe myself and ask you to do that too. I'm a short white woman with short brown hair and a stripy top, cardigan, and black denim skirt. So Melissa, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Melly. I'm a film programmer for Mayhem Film Festival in Nottingham, and I'm also the cinema and screen producer at Warwick Art Centre, which is a fancy title just to say that I oversee the film program at Warwick Art Centre. And I am a pale skin, mixed race woman in my 30s with wavy brown hair, and I'm wearing a black dress.
I'm Andrew Partridge, and I'm the Festival Director of Scotland Loves Anime, as well as the CEO of Anime Limited, which is now a part of Play On Pictures in the Embracer Group as of October time. And I am a swarthy, Lebanese-British man, about 5'8", who looks vaguely like Rasputin if he was left in the anime industry for 10 years, or 18 years actually. I've lost track of time as well, apparently, in the anime jail. So, onwards.
Nia, you're live from Abertoir.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm sorry that I'm giant in the background behind everyone else. I'm Nia. I'm a co-director of Abertoir Horror Festival. Abertoir Horror Festival is Wales's only horror film festival. It was established in 2006, and I've been part of the team for a very long time. And we've kind of just finished this year's edition of the festival, so my voice is a bit croaky. I'm still a bit tired, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to being part of the panel.
Thank you. All of your festivals happened quite recently, so my first question would be to ask how it went, and maybe if in a fully post-pandemic context, what did you notice in terms of your audience makeup, behavior, and engagement that you would take away in future seasons and program and work?
Okay, I'll start. So yeah, this was our first full Mayhem, as in with no seating restrictions or any kind of restrictions since 2019. So we saw really healthy audiences this year. We're almost back at pre-pandemic levels. It wasn't quite as high as 2019, but it was up there. The main difference for us is that actually we sold more full festival passes than we've ever had this year. So I guess the audience who did come back were more committed in that they were committed to the full 4 days, as opposed to just sort of dipping in and out of the weekend. But we haven't seen any major difference from pre-pandemic to nowadays.
It was also our first full festival back since the pandemic in 2019, and it was very different to before. So I was in Tokyo on business 3 weeks before the festival when I got the heart-wrenching news that the CMI, one of our 2 venues, had gone into administration, which was a surprise, and with £15,000 of my money. That was also fantastic. It was heartbreaking news though as well. The real heartbreak was the people. We've worked with them for the entire run of the festival, 13 years, including during the pandemic, making sure that we filtered money back from the festival when we were online to them. And money you can replace in the end of the day, one way or another, whether it takes time or not. People's jobs you can't on that easily, and it's it was really it was a very whirlwind set of emotions, because on one side it was very very emotional dealing with that. On the other side, we had 3 weeks to run a festival, and we were lucky we got a venue on it, so we still ran. But I would say the numbers were, well, pre-pandemic we did just shy of 7,000 admissions. This time it was 4,000. So there was a bit of improvisation involved in it, but I would still say it went well. It's still in about the middle of the performance out of the 13 years we've run. So.
But what about you, Nia?
I'm not sure I'm catching what everyone else is saying really well, but I think it's we're talking about how this year's gone compared to previous years. So I hope I'm going to be talking about the right thing relative to everyone else. But it's been interesting the extent to which people have come back this year in person was perhaps more than we were expecting. We were fully online in 2020. We were socially distanced in person last year, but also online as well. And this year we were sort of back to normal, so to speak, in the cinema, but also still retained a bit of the online portion, which a lot of festivals haven't done, and I think understandably. And we were a little bit maybe underprepared for how busy we were going to be, relatively speaking, at our in-person event. People were back from, the first day. For context, Abertoir is a 6-day festival, so it's Tuesday to Sunday, and we usually see it get really busy around Thursday, Friday towards the weekend, but people were there from Tuesday. It was almost full from Tuesday. But then maybe the sort of flip side of that, we had the online portion of the festival, which was maybe a bit quieter again. We did have a slightly smaller program than we had last year, so I've not done the maths yet to see sort of how it actually balances out, whether it was quieter or whether it just seemed quieter. But we had some people very vocally appreciative of us having the online portion of the festival still, and being able to access it and sort of take part and everything. So that it's been interesting to sort of see that shift and how that's changed in the past couple of years, because the online stuff is completely new to us as a festival team. We've been very much learning as we go with that. So it's going to be interesting to sort of dig a bit deeper once we've had a bit of rest time since the end of that part of the festival.
Thank you. I have some interesting data from last year's Japan season with the blockbuster season we did, where it was the highest proportion of young audiences we ever had across the blockbuster season, which was partly due to the fact we had a lot of anime screenings that reached out a lot of young people and international and UK students. And with the current Injunda Monster season, there's been a really effort to really the way we approach the theme, to really encourage the fact that to think beyond horror as made by and for white men only. And there's been this really recognition for a while now that young, diverse voices are really present and rich in horror and in anime. So I'm kind of interested to hear and practically the way you work in your program and your audience engagement with young and diverse audiences.
Okay. So how we work is, so anime is very sticky category for young audiences. Our audience is predominantly aged between 15 and 34, much more into the 20s than the 30s on it as well, as far as that goes on it. And they are they're platform agnostic effectively. So if it's something they've been watching as a TV series, for example, on Netflix or somewhere else, they will, if there's a film set afterwards, they won't, it doesn't matter if it's on a platform or on screen in cinema, they'll go and see it wherever they can first. But there's also a really diverse range of other films. There's also like original film, which is kind of my passion area on it, which is like, it's much harder to get people because you need to educate people in advance, and that's where Scotland Loves Anime came from to start with. In 2010, we were trying to desperately place a film at the company I was at, which was a really nice like samurai story. It was an action piece. It wasn't like Studio Ghibli. It wasn't for families. It was for teenage and adult audiences. And the general opinion was like, I could maybe get you 1 or 2 cinemas, but nothing else from like freelance programmers at the time. It was kind of it was a tough time because it was before anything like Dragon Ball broke in. So we started Scotland Loves Anime from the perspective of not only screening these films, but adding context to them so people could go away and talk about them, even if it was just something useful for a pub quiz later. Like basically, that was the minimum bar of entry for us on it was if they could have something useful in the pub later to tell friends, that would be worth it. So we added introductions from experts in the field, and we also brought as diverse a range of creators as we could to connect to the audience. So in Japan, the gender balance for directors is incredibly out of whack. So we've made we're the only festival in the UK has made an active effort to bring female directors in Japanese animation over, ranging from Naoko Yamada. We had colorists and creators and producers from Hotorubi no Morie in our second year, like Mari Okada, a scriptwriter and director now as well, and trying to connect people with not just one type of director, basically, or creative, so they can understand how the films are made as well as challenges they face,
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the age of our audience, I'm going to be honest and say that the core audience for the festival itself is actually more early to mid-30s, I would say. But, Broadway and Mayhem, so Mayhem takes place at Broadway in Nottingham every year, and we both have done a lot of work sort of trying to reach out to young audiences. So Broadway go to the student fairs every year, and because we fall in October, it's sort of the perfect timing to sort of promote that there. But then we do screenings outside of the festival dates throughout the year, and I think we see probably more young audiences through those screenings throughout the year. And I think that's where that audience is building a little more in terms of the more sort of 16 to 30 age range. But the core sort of the festival pass holders tend to be people who have been with Mayhem since it started. Mayhem is turning 18 next year, so we've all sort of aged together, and they're now sort of in their 30s, and it's really great that they're so loyal and they stay with us. But it's also about making sure that we bring in new people in as well. In terms of the programming, we try and keep our finger on the pulse as much as possible. Horror, there's so much in horror, and I'm sure it's the same for anime, there's so many films and we watch so much stuff, but it's also not everything is available to us. And there may be, especially now with streaming as well, Shudder has expanded so much over the pandemic because it was suddenly everyone was turning to streaming, and so they became the horror Netflix. And that means a lot of films that we see that we're really excited about aren't just landed on Shudder in September, and that means it's too late for it to go to the festival. So we're having to navigate that a little bit as well. But we do try and bring in new talent, similar to what you were saying, make sure that our program has people that the audience will recognize because they've sort of they have recognized filmmakers, but also new ones. And also we've had the privilege of seeing filmmakers coming through our shorts program, and then they've evolved and made features, and we've been able to sort of follow their evolution in that way, and that's been really, really exciting too.
Nice, thank you. How about you, Nia? I also have, obviously you had your Blackula screening with William Crane live from Abertoir a few days ago. You can talk about that or something else. Not Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but not entirely make out what's being said. But I think I found the captions to follow, so I'm gonna give you an answer, slightly guessing.
I can repeat
the basis of the context of the captions. So I'm sorry if I'm slightly off topic again. But I think we're on the topic of sort of audience diversity and what the audience makeup is. Yes. I think with us, we're we're a relatively small festival in terms of our capacity, so our cinema is relatively small, and we're very reliant on a core loyal audience that's been there from the start. Well, not necessarily from the start, but does return on a year-by-year basis. And it's every year I enjoy seeing who's come back maybe from a few years ago or who's new, and we've been going for quite a while now, and I think we've perhaps started with that maybe. I don't want to fall back on like horror fan stereotypes, but they definitely sort of have some root in reality. So you do have a sort of part of the core audience that is your metalheads who will wear black t-shirts all the time, and as a black t-shirt wearer, I sort of semi-count myself in that. But then over the years, we've had like younger audience come in and become part of that core audience as well. And I do think that our program has contributed to that, and I think highlighting where we can, and when we do sort of manage a decent job of it, highlighting diversity in the program and sort of naming it rather than just going, this is another, any old film in the program, is sort of impactful in terms of that. So I think that, audiences appreciate that it's sort of, there's diversity on screen intentionally as well. And I think that, not that people, just want to see just themselves, but I think it does make a difference. And absolutely something like this particular event that we've had and our day dedicated to blaxploitation horror has been really, really interesting to do, and it's sort of still ongoing, so it's hard to sort of evaluate it really in terms of various aspects, but being able to collaborate with Bristol Black Horror Club, for example, and sort of we've had introductions from one of our films was introduced by a young black filmmaker and things like this, so it's building on that and then hopefully seeing that translate in terms of the audiences we're reaching as well. And I'll leave it there in case I'm not answering the right question.
No, you are. Actually, you used the word collaboration, and I think a lot of people in this audience are programmers who are not genre cinema specialists, who might be interested to hear like your own experience, like how they can work better with specialized outfits, and if you have any examples of partnerships you've had working with non-specialist venues, and the successes, the challenges, and the kind of main takeaways. Like I know also, like Melly, the fact that you both work for a specialized film festival and also as a programmer for a multimedia arts venue. Like, how did you incorporate your expertise into the more general work? And
yeah, I mean, it's interesting now. I'm relatively new to my role at Warwick Arts Centre. We've only reopened since September of last year, so it's only been a program that's been open for like 15, 16 months. And so we are starting from scratch. There isn't a horror audience there as sort of like a starter, but I think that's probably true of any venue. Broadway wasn't a horror spot to begin with. It's just sort of like that audience grew, and Mayhem helped grow that audience for the venue. So I think, it is sort of baby steps. Obviously, I have that, I'm into that, so I'll bring it into the program, but you have to take successes in a different way. So, for example, for us, what's worked at Warwick, we're still in the middle of the season for In Dreams Are Monsters, which is an exploration of feminism in vampiric tales, like the representation of women in vampire films. And the films have been sort of hit and miss, but we did have a panel discussion yesterday. So we had a screening of Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, and then we had a panel discussion with Jennifer Handorf, Sabina Stant, and Helen Whitley, who is a professor at University of Warwick who specializes in horror. And that had like 60 tickets sold, and we had young audiences in that. And so it's, you kind of have to look at that and see how engaged the audience is. Everyone had a question. Everyone really wanted to sort of engage directly with the panel. And I think you just have to look at that and not so much look at the number as such, because it's never going to happen overnight. And you have to grow that audience. And I think that's true for any sort of like specialized, strands that you bring into your program. Like I said, Mayhem, Broadway wasn't a horror spot to begin with, and it took, I would say, probably a good 10 years for Broadway to really sort of reap the rewards year round of like the audience that Mayhem was bringing in, and then you grow that audience and you nurture them. But yeah, it's a step-by-step process, basically.
Yeah, like it's definitely a step-by-step thing. So I started working in anime in 2004 with Bandai, who are the guys who did Power Rangers. If you didn't know, they did anime as well. Quick question actually nowadays. How many people here have seen an anime that is not Studio Ghibli? Now that's a healthy audience. I can tell you in 2010 when we started this, that would have been a quarter of the size max, and the anime would have been Pokemon. On the list. And it's something which has really grown. Scott Love's anime started from a point of frustration. The film I mentioned originally was actually from 2007 or so, like when I think about it now. And like the issue was, I was frustrating trying to get people to take anime seriously. People recognized it brought young people in at that point, or a different audience in, but it was really a stocking filler at that point, effectively, since we're getting to like festive season on it, as opposed to something on its own. And I think the real focus has shifted over time for us in anime. Like it's now like much more mainstream than it was before on that frontier. So our role has changed as well as a festival. It's become, the contextualization point is almost as important as showing the gems, like and kind of the hidden diamonds in the rough now on it. Like the popular films will find their way over regardless. There was a time when Makoto Shinkai wouldn't make it here, and it's coming out from Sony next year, for example, which is a huge change when companies like that start taking semi-interest in the area, I suppose, when you think about it. But yeah, so I mean, like the collaboration has changed as well as a result. So our role has also been to help contextualize what's good for new audiences, what's good for existing audiences, and trying to help. Like kind of like our relationship with both the Glasgow Film Theatre and the Film House were like, in the latter case, like was in Film House, we got much more like Glasgow's audience tended to be very much specifically the audience we expected, young, like engaged with anime. But the Film House, you got like a really diverse mix. I had people who were like my old lecturers who didn't even know I was running it show up. For example, in linguistics, which was a very like this isn't even linguistics wasn't even specifically related to Japanese animation there and such. They were taking their kids because their kids loved like animation, and like they kept coming back as a result and bringing people with them, family members, you know.
I think we did Sheffield Loves Anime last year, and the show reported that they had like people who had never been to the show and much younger people coming because of that as like a non-specialist venue. But
yeah, and I think there is a preference actually for independent venues where possible with Japanese animation. And the old stereotype, you go back in the UK, is to things like actually Akira as opposed to Studio Ghibli. Like it was a counterculture movement, like actually, so which sits very well with independence actually more than anything. People want to support local in that particular audience on it, especially. So when it's there, they show up, you know.
Yeah. Nia, did you hear the question? Do you have anything to add? So far, you've been really on point with what you've been answering, just so you know. Like, been no misunderstanding.
I'm going to take a punt again. I talk a little bit again about our Blackula events this year. I think something that's been very exciting about that is how many venues that maybe we wouldn't have expected to sort of give that a go booked it and sort of took part in it. And as I say, I genuinely, hand on heart, haven't actually seen like the numbers or anything from any of that. So I can't say if they were necessarily well attended or anything. But I know one example of a sort of non-traditional cinema venue who took part in the live broadcast of our Q&A after the film. And I think that they had a shall we say, very small audience. But the audience member, one audience member there had their question read out as part of the Q&A, and they were really excited and they had a great time with it. And I think, you know, that for that venue, for example, is kind of a starting point. And, you know, I think it's been mentioned already, you know, this stuff takes time. And I think it's really exciting to have had an event like that, a venue like that. And I think just in terms of thinking of our own venue where the festival takes place. It's a sort of big art centre, and we find every year now, we'll have like regular customers of the cinema there regularly, picking and choosing from our lineup, the stuff that they want to see. They might not be horror fans, but they might want to come see, I don't know, The Menu, for example, which we had a sort of preview screening of, or they'll come see when we've got a live piano accompaniment to a silent film or something. So they're not necessarily horror fans, they're not necessarily people who want to come sit through 6 days of the festival, but they will pick and choose. And I think to me, that's the beauty of horror, is how broad it is, means that there's so many ways into it. So, I think it does, with horror in particular, at least. And I think to me, I think this sort of applies to anime as well, it's so broad. There's no, even though I think there are preconceptions about, what a horror film is, if you don't actually watch horror films maybe, or don't want to, then actually it's much broader than that, and you can take advantage of that to sort of get people into it, I suppose. And I think that's, in terms of considering programming, I think that's a really valuable way to approach any kind of genre, really.
Yeah, like some genres are less constrained by this idea that they're so narrow, and actually we spoke about that a lot, that anime and horror has so many flavors and so many aspects to it that it's actually easier than programmers might think to like curate it well in a program. I'm going to stop asking questions and ask Eleanor if there's any Slido.
We do have some Slido questions. This one's for you first. So, does Scotland Love Anime do any year-round programming outside of the festival dates? Is the audience interested in more regular, maybe monthly programming?
We don't just now because, I also run a chunky other company, basically, which means that time is the issue. We're looking at what we can do to bring more staff in to help do that. I think there is demand for a month. I think the thing which we always found with venues is that we bring in the audience, and I suspect it's the same for all of us on it. You bring the audience to the venue, but if nothing else is going on throughout the year, that audience dissipates. Otherwise, they're not necessarily going to engage with everything else that's going on. And I really want them to. And I think by being at the venues, both the Glasgow Film Theatre and the Film House and the Belmont, were all really supportive of the festivals. They're all supportive of the festival scene. On it, so there's a lot of really diverse programming that goes on. And if there's something else, if you're going there to see an anime film, for example, once a month, the odds of you spotting something else that's really cool, is much higher. On the list, and you may well take a punt then. But if you're only coming once a year, you're only going to see, if you're lucky, what else is on at the same time as us, which is it can be very hit and miss on that frontier. And I think there is a demand for year round. And I think there's such a wide range of content you could have. You could really, with anime, you could it's like horror as well. You could run literally a strand for the whole year, once a month on one particular area, or you could have a really broad-reaching thing, and you could still, it wouldn't interfere with programming the main festival in the year, to be honest. So it's, I think there is a demand for it.
Thank you. I think this is for everybody, is how do you account for the enthusiasm for your genres by neurodiverse audiences, and how do you cater for them specifically?
There's next. Do you want to go, or Nia? Did you hear that?
No.
Kind of heard it.
It was about why is that there's so much excitement for genre cinema with neurodiverse audiences, and how do you cater for that kind of demand?
So I think one thing that I do sort of in my role with the festival is that I do try to sort of emphasize, or try and do as much as we can around, just broadly speaking, accessibility and making sort of information available. That's something we do. I'm trying to think of how to say this, because I do think that our audience, we had someone sort of help us out this year who is going to give us feedback, for example, on making the festival and the program more accessible to autistic people in their experience. And I think we're a very available festival team, if that makes sense, because we're quite small. And I think that I'm speculating, actually. I don't have any factual basis for this. So I think the fact that we're very available and we're very open when people have questions, we're very accommodating. And I like to think that we're approachable. I know that's, approachable is different for everyone anyway. But that is something we're always quite conscious of communicating as well. I always try to put far more information than you might normally find on on an event website, on our website where we can, and where we do get feedback, and we do always sort of ask people to send us direct feedback. We will take that into account as much as we can, but I must admit, I don't think that it's necessarily something that we very intentionally do at the moment. It's just sort of part of a more broad package of sort of making the festival as sort of open and hopefully approachable in terms of being able to do better where people are able to give us feedback. I hope that actually answered the question, sorry.
It's also nice that it comes so organically, just like that you're just a lovely festival. Is there any other question on Slido or?
Yes. Is genre cinema more fun? I just did finger quotes for audiences.
I mean, I think that's an incredibly subjective. Like the idea of fun is subjective to anyone. Like for some people, horror is their worst nightmare because they don't want to go into a space and be scared. Personally, to me, it's my version of a roller coaster, and I love that. But it's fun is subjective. So I don't know. I think what I will say is that I think both for anime and for horror, and that's been touched on earlier already in the panel, they're both incredibly rich genres, and you sort of have horror and anime as labels, but actually those films are dramas, comedies, thrillers, supernatural stories, they're international films, foreign language films. Like there's so many other things, and I think maybe it's not that they're more fun, it's just that they're just very rich as genre, and so everyone can sort of find something in it that they like, maybe.
Yeah, I do also think it's kind of subjective. I would say that we've had more laughs in this session than any of the other sessions, though. I've been in here all day, so I'm not saying that is indicative towards it, though. It's a point. It just means that maybe there's a bit more self-depreciation going on. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's what you do. The people who the hardcore audiences who know what they're looking for. Yes, I think they enjoy those areas very much as a passion area. But I think it's more both horror and anime, more than that. It's more than just the core people who already know it. I think there's a lot of layers to bringing people into both genres on it, and they are both so broad reaching in terms of what they cover that actually maybe there's just a lot more touch points in some of these areas like horror and anime for it, which gives that impression. But what you like is what you like as well on that frontier. So whatever form of film you enjoy, it's everyone here has something they enjoy that's maybe that overlaps with something else as well on it. So it's pretty a good wide question on it. I like that.
It's quite a good misconception around genre that you're debunking here, which is how broad it is, and I think it's quite a useful tip for programmers that actually it's not as narrow and niche and difficult as you might think. And I think when we had a conversation prior to that, there was a lot of discussion around actually utilizing regional and local talent and the people around you, and also I think it was you who said that actually if you don't know or like horror film, then don't program it, but get someone who does to do it. And obviously there's resources here as well, but maybe even in-house, a younger programmer, an assistant, someone who can bring that knowledge.
Yeah, I think audiences can tell if you're making a genuine effort or if you're just taking something there that you have no idea what you're doing. And so, we can't be experts in everything. I don't know a lot about anime, so if I was trying to program a season about anime, I would try and reach out to somebody who probably knows that more than I do. But it's, up and down the country, there's so much talent. I mean, if you just look at horror, you've got Abertoir, you've got Undead, you've got Mayhem, you've got Celluloid Screams, you've got Grimfest, you've got Frightfest. I mean, I could go on. Like, there are so many. And that talent isn't just, and the talent and the audience isn't just London-based or like sort of like metro-centric that way. There's talent everywhere, and I'm sure it's true also for anime. So yeah, if you're not sure, there's probably someone in your team who's really into this stuff. And if not, reach out to the community. I mean, we're all pretty friendly, I think.
I think so. Try to be. Yeah. But you're also getting, in anime, you're also getting what we term at least kind of second or even third generation anime fans now, which means that, they're growing up based on their parents or, like, in some extreme cases, just like grandparents who've watched anime, and it's like feeding down to ranks. So you're getting people now who are starting their first jobs or around second jobs, basically, who are anime fans, which is really, like, it's fascinating. A side thing, people like HMV, for example, lots of their merch buyers are young and grew up on anime, for example. But you're seeing it also in like cinema programming now as well. The next generation in a very they're enthusiastic, or they're beginning to be at least, about parts of it beyond just, say, Studio Ghibli or Akira, like Honor, which is cool.
I've saved quite a weighty question for last. So Nia, I hope you can hear me. The question is, who is the best ghost? So I'd like to hear from the whole panel.
Wow. Nia, do you want to go first? Because you heard that. You were like, yes, I have an answer.
Who is the best ghost is what I heard. So
yes, correct.
For the sake of not taking ages to mull over it, the best ghost, in my opinion, is Sadako from The Ring.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think J-horror do ghost very well. I don't think it's beatable. It's just a good shout.
Strong agree on that. Every time I go past the Kadokawa booth as well, they're selling some version of another ghost story as well. And every time I get the chills, I'm like, this meeting is unsettling, because the TV's always going on in the background during things like EFM and such as well. So it's like, it's unsettling to say the least. I don't think anime's captured it as well as live action as well on that frontier. I still think, you can't beat Sadako on that.
I'm just doing a shout out to Lisa Brooks over there, because we had the Celluloid Screams Ghost Watch immersive experience that we supported for Angels and Monsters, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Pipes. That's it. We're done. So, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Nia, for joining us. Sorry about the sound. Thank you.